Hello, this is David McCann for Elementor 360. Welcome to another 360 tutorial. In this tutorial, I want to look at creating theme templates with dynamic content for Elementor. Dynamic content for Elementor is an add-on pack that can be used with Elementor Free and Elementor Pro. In this tutorial, I want to look at the templating features of dynamic content for Elementor. In the old days, if you wanted a special layout or design for your post content, then you need to create a theme template using PHP. The same thing was true if you had any custom fields that you wanted to show. Today's premium page builders, however, give us the ability to create theme templates with drag and drop. Elementor Pro is one of those premium page builders that adds a theme builder. Elementor Pro gives us a lot of flexibility when creating the single template, but not so much when creating archive templates. For instance, if you want to show custom fields in an archive template created with Elementor Pro, then you need to use a third-party add-on. And what happens if you don't have Elementor Pro? Yes, there are third-party add-ons that provide theming features without Pro. And we're going to look at one of those, dynamic content for Elementor. But fair warning, as we'll see, in some ways, Elementor Pro makes the process easier. I have a test website set up here using the Page Builder framework. I've installed several plugins. I have Custom Post Type UI and Advanced Custom Fields Pro installed. And I've used those to create a custom post type called Books. If you haven't done that before, then you may want to check out this post and video where I talk through the process. I also have a post and video that shows how to create the single and archive template using Elementor Pro if you're unfamiliar with that process and would like to compare it to what we're going to do in this video. The link for those are in the accompanying post for this video on the Elementor 360 website. I also have Elementor installed and dynamic content for Elementor installed, but I've deactivated Elementor Pro because we won't be using it in this tutorial. I've created several records for the custom post type books, and if we look at one, we can see that in addition to the title, the content, the featured image, we also have a link to the author's website and the author's photo. These are advanced custom fields that we've added to the custom post type. If we look at the default display on the front end for the book custom post type, we can see that it needs some theming work. Similarly, if we look at the archive for books, we can see that that also needs some theming. To get started, we go to the admin. If we had Elementor Pro active, we would click on this link here for Theme Builder, but we can see that it's not active when we're using free. Instead, with dynamic content for Elementor, there are two places we can go to assign theme templates. There's this link here for Template System, which shows us the dynamic template system interface. And there's also the dynamic content link settings under the Elementor menu, which has the same page here, along with other settings for the add-on pack up here in the other tabs. When we look at the book's custom post type, we can see that there's no page template assigned for the single, and there's none assigned for the archive either. So let's create one. Go here to Add New, and we get a pop-up where we choose the template type. We have the option of page or section. Again, if we were using Elementor Pro, there would be the option here to specify if we were doing a single or archive, but that's not an option here. So let's take page and we'll give it a name. Click Create Template. We go into the Elementor editor. So we're going to create a simple layout with the featured image on the left, the book cover, and the content on the right. So let's choose this row layout. First thing we see is that we need some margin at the top. So let's edit the section, go to Advanced, and add some pixels there. Now let's add the featured image. Dynamic content for Elementor gives us these widgets to use in theming. So let's drag and drop the featured image over. We want to have a thumbnail. We'll align it centered. And since this is the single, we won't have it linked to anything. Now, one thing you see is that there's no preview. That's something that Elementor Pro has, but that we don't get in this situation. It isn't a showstopper, though it would be nice to have that preview to help with the layout. Next, let's add in the title. We'll make it an H1. Now we'll drop in the post meta. And you see that dynamic content for Elementor gives us this post meta widget. However, I wasn't able to get anything out of this. What you think you'd want here is something like, let's do author. And that's not something here. Let's try post author. So I didn't have much success trying to use that widget. Instead, what I ended up using was this text editor with tokens. So here we can create a line of text interspersed with tokens, and that's what we'll use for our post meta. It took some trial and error, but I came up with this. Posted on December 17th, 2019 by David, 0 comments. And I used these tokens, dynamic tokens. And if you looked at the first video I did looking at dynamic content for Elementor, then you may have seen some use of these tokens that might help. One thing you'll notice here is that I have 2 tokens for date. The first one has the month and the date number, and then there's a comma, and the second one has the year. And that's because I couldn't figure out how to include the comma inside here. It wouldn't work for me. So there may be some way to do it, but this is kind of what I came up with. And then I styled this and changed the size of the meta, which kind of more matched what I've seen in themes where the post meta was smaller. Now let's add the content, and there is a content widget. Okay, so this is placeholder text, it says there. Now you have some options here for content filters and alignment and whatnot, but we don't need any of those. So if you remember, we had some advanced custom fields. We had the author photo and a link to the website, so let's add those. Dynamic content for Elementor has good support for advanced custom fields, and we can use this ACF fields widget and drop it underneath the featured image. You notice, since we can't see the featured image, we'll just, I think this is the place for it. And here's a list of the advanced custom fields. Now this is a lot easier to get than with Elementor Pro, where normally with Elementor Pro you'd go into this dynamic area. So this is a nice enhancement. This widget is pretty nice. So we want the image, and then it has field type, and our field type is image. That was nice, an easy way to select that. Again, we don't have the preview, which is too bad. And if we look at the settings area here, then we can change the size here. It doesn't change the size in the preview, but anyway. Now let's add a button to go to the author's website. And for that, we're going to use a regular Elementor button, and we'll drop that in there. We'll center it. We'll change the text to be visit author's website. And then for the link, we'll click this dynamic token and then turn on the wizard. And here we'll start typing, and we see here's the URL for the author's website, the advanced custom field. So it found that, and that was nice. We'll add that in. And then if we go back to here, to the link options, there's the option to open in a new window, so we'll select that. So at this point, I think we have our book single. Let's see if what we did is going to work. Let's go back to the dashboard, and let's go to the dynamic content template system. Choose the book type, run single, and here's that template that we just created. We'll save that and go look at a record on the front end. And here's our single book record showing. It picked up the correct title, featured image. Here's our post meta and our content. Here's the author's photo and the button that links to the author's website. Now, one thing you can see here is that it's not quite aligned right, and that's probably something, if we had a preview, it would have made it easier to do that, and we can go in and play around with that. But for our purposes, I think this was a success, and it wasn't too hard to do. Now let's create the archive template. I'm actually going to show two different ways to do that. Let's go here and go add new, click page, and give it a name. Again, we go into the Elementor editor, and I'm going to add a heading here and give that a name, books. Add some space at the top. And now dynamic content has this dynamic posts widget, which is used for displaying lists of posts like we do in the archive. So we'll add that. And you can see there are a ton of options here. So this is custom post type, dynamic, ACF relationships, or from a specific post. And for post type, we don't want posts, so we're going to X that out and put in books. So it picks up those and shows us the preview of that, which is nice. Then we have these options here to exclude myself or exclude the page parent. And these would be used if we were creating a listing of related posts, maybe to show at the bottom of a post for the reader to keep them on the site, show them other things they might be interested in. So we'll turn that off, and then we don't need to exclude any posts. We have these filters here. You can filter by taxonomy, date, author, parent. We don't need to do any of those here, but if you were creating specific layouts and templates for, say, a taxonomy or an author or whatnot, then you'd want to go in and use these. So let's go to layout, and we have it set to image on top, but what we want to do is I want to have rows, so I'm going to put image on the left. And then there's something here called distribution. And what that is for how much for each record, how much space the image on the left is going to take. So I'm going to change that to 25%. And then we have show title, yes, show image, yes, and show content, no, yes, show content, or show excerpt. Now, excerpt just works if you have an actual excerpt defined, and often these days people use themes or Elementor and other page builders automatically generate an excerpt. So I don't have excerpt manually defined, so I'm going to do content, and we see now we get the full record here. And then there's the option to show metadata, to show author, date, read more. Yes, we want the read more button at the bottom. So then these things here, you can actually drag and drop them if you wanted to, which we don't need to, but you could if you wanted to reorder the content. Now, if I look on grid, I want one item, so that's looking better. And then if I go to content, I can limit it to a number of characters, and that's what we want for the excerpt. And note that if we had selected excerpt up in the layout option, this wouldn't be an option here. Let's go to the image, and we'll make those images the same size. So things are looking pretty good, but now we need to add some spacing. And so we'll go into style, and you can see there are styling options for these different elements. So we'll start with blocks, and we will add some margin to the bottom. Let's say 20 pixels. Maybe make it even a little more. Okay. And then for the title, we need a little space there. So we'll add padding to the bottom there. And then for content, we'll do the same thing. We'll add some space at the bottom. I think maybe I'll do a little more there at the title. Okay, so I think we have our archive here. Read more button looks okay. One more thing we might want to add is under render is to show pagination if we had more records than we do, but we don't. So let's publish this now. Let's go back to the dashboard, go to the template system, books and archives, and now let's assign that archive that we just created and save it and go to the front and take a look. And there's the archive that we just created. So that worked, and it was pretty easy, and there were a ton of options for customizing how this looked. So the dynamic posts widget is really nice. Now I said there are two ways I was going to show, and there's a neat feature here that dynamic content for Elementor gives us, and let's take a look at that. We're going to create an alternate, we're going to create another archive template. So we go to templates, add new. We're going to again click page, but this time we're going to design the loop, the single item in the archive. So we'll go book loop, create template. Now I'm going to use the same layout. We don't have to worry about the padding at the top because this is going to be part of a loop in the archive. Here I'm going to now add in the featured image, and we'll set it to our size. Let's say medium. Here, because it's the archive, we'll want it to link to the post URL. Dynamic content for Elementor has added this extra settings tab up here, so I'm going to turn that on and say that we want the post title. Now over here I'm going to add the title. We'll make this an H2. We want it to link to the post URL. And in settings we're also going to set the source, and then we're going to add the excerpt. We're going to do manual manipulation because if you remember we don't have defined excerpts. We're going to generate one, and it'll be 40 words. And I found that I need to do this strip tags, otherwise I get a lot of blank space at the bottom there. And now the last thing we need to add is our read more. So we'll add that in underneath. Take out that little bolding of the more, and that also links to the post URL. We'll set the width at say 25 pixels, maybe a little more, 30. So remember we have the advanced custom fields, the author's photo, and a link to their website. So let's add that. Let's go and find that ACF fields, and we'll drop that in under the author's photo. It's, I guess this is the right place. And now this is really nice. We have the fields show up right away. It's an image, and we can go into the settings and we can set it to be a small thumbnail. We can have it link to an ACF field, so it picks that up right away. You can see that's real easy to do. We don't have the preview, unfortunately. Let's see, I think before we go, we'll move this over here. You can see it shows very large. Anyway, I'm going to save that, and we'll go back to the dashboard. And one thing I wanted to show you before we continue is when you go back and edit the loop, the excerpt here, the display of it is corrupted. A rough edge, problem. It's functionally, everything still works fine, but I just thought I'd show it to you since I noticed this, that it was a display issue there. But anyway, So we'll make an archive template that includes that. We'll go to Add New, select Page, and this time we'll do Alt Book Archive with loop item. And we'll do the same thing we did the first time. We'll add a heading and add some spacing for that. And then we will again add this dynamic posts widget. And we're going to change that to books. Turn that off. And now we're going to go to dynamic content. And you see we have the option for enable template or enable template 2. And you would use template 2 if you were alternating rows. But I'm just going to use 1. And we're going to select our template here, and now we go to grid and we set it to 1. So this looks pretty good. We see our author's image here. We'll turn on pagination. If we had more records, then we'd want that to show. We'll save that, and now let's go back to the dashboard, back to the template system, choose books and go to archive. We remove the first one we created, and let's add the one we just created with the loop item. Save that, go to the front end and look at our book archive. There we have it with the custom field, the custom image here. Obviously, we'd probably want to style this a little more, add more space, and make this a button, but I think you get the idea. So this was pretty powerful. With the loop, we were able to add custom fields into the archive. So one last thing I wanted to show you is that if we go in and edit a single book record, Dynamic Content for Elementor has added this little area here, and if we wanted to have a different template for some book records, then we could create them. We'd only have one assigned, but we could, in an ad hoc manner, choose a different template here that would override the default. So that provides some flexibility. I know sometimes you want slightly different layout for some records. So I just wanted to show you that before we wrapped up. In summary and conclusion, if you have Elementor Pro, I'm not sure why you would use the dynamic content for Elementor template system for single templates, because one of the advantages of Elementor Pro is that you have that content preview when creating the template, which is really nice. I could see, however, even if you have Elementor Pro, that you might want to use the dynamic content for Elementor template archive if you needed to include custom fields in your archive. The dynamic content for Elementor template system helps to overcome some of the limits of the Elementor Pro archive implementation. Elementor Pro aside, the dynamic content for Elementor template system works pretty well, and you can certainly create templates using it. Showing the preview data would be a big improvement. Another improvement would be to make it easier to output the regular post meta, things like author, publication date, number of comments. It wasn't clear to me what that post meta widget was for. And there was another rough edge when we went back in to edit the loop template where the preview of the excerpt was corrupted, though everything was still functional. Overall, though, even though there were some rough edges, they didn't stop me from creating the templates I needed. The dynamic posts widget is really powerful, and I was impressed with its options and flexibility. It's perhaps the most flexible posts widget that I've seen in any add-on pack. The ability to create a custom archive loop is also a powerful feature that allows you to customize the loop in ways that most posts widgets don't. For example, to include advanced custom fields widgets. And another highlight was the ACF Fields widget. This widget makes it much easier to work with advanced custom fields than the dynamic content options in Elementor Pro. Overall, I'd say that the dynamic template system of this add-on is an important feature that I think many people will find useful. So that's the tutorial. I hope you found it useful. Check out the Elementor 360 website for other Elementor tutorials. Thank you for watching.